Hey guys, welcome back to another part of What If Deku Was Robin. Now, I know it's been a long time since you heard me, but hopefully, hey man, this will be a good jumping back on point. If you haven't already watched the first part, I want to recommend that you do that first. For those of you that have, here is a little recap. Izuku Midoriya lost his mother. He stayed with Bakugo for a few days before meeting his father, Bruce Wayne. Moving to Gotham to live with his father, he spent the next few months in the care of Alfred Pennyworth. He struggled to cope with the changes of his new life. As time went on, a reminder of his past showed up in the form of a package. But this package, Izuku wanted nothing to do with. The butler, Alfred, tried to soothe the boy by giving him some ice cream, and though they may have had some fond moments, ultimately, Izuku was reminded that he was alone, that his father was not ever there, and this made him sad. That was a feeling that would soon change to excitement as he realized that the billionaire is also Batman. Another reminder that Batman has not had a Robin in this universe. Before we jump back into it, make sure that you hit that like, smash that subscribe button, ring that bell so you never miss a video. And with that being said, let's do this. Months pass. Izuku finishes up an intense training session designed to imitate a hostage situation. His father stands on the side pointing out his shortcomings, like taking too long to get through a locked door, subduing a large enemy, and missing useful items for his task. He tells the child to run it again. The second time goes better, but mistakes are still made. Bruce's patience is wearing thin. He opens his mouth. Before he can say something which he may regret, Alfred appears announcing that he has brought them lunch. Grabbing a sandwich, Midoriya bites into it. He devours it quickly and reaches for another. The butler stops him and tells him to slow down in order to both enjoy the food and to show some manners. The boy nods and slowly reaches for another. Joining him, the father says nothing as they eat. Moments pass, with all three there in silence, the butler standing behind them. That quiet duty always makes the kid feel uneasy. It forces him to speak. His discomfort translates into an awkward question. You told Kachan's mom that you didn't know about me. That was a lie, wasn't it? It takes the man that he shares blood ties with a minute to respond. He takes a bite. His mouth moves with a slow and methodical action, almost as if to stall. When he swallows, he replies in a low voice. It was. I discovered that you were born about the time you were 2. Your mother was struggling financially. She finally reached out to me, knowing that I could provide for you both. She did so in secret and wished to keep it that way. She loved her quiet and peaceful life with you. Izuku looks at his father's face while he speaks. He studies it, trying to gauge the emotions behind the words. A smart child, he reads between the lines and notes that Batman was not the kind of father to invite such tranquility. He pauses and his eyes stare through the man back into the past. Bruce agrees with him, the words returning the boy to the present. Midoriya meets the man's eyes and states, "You also wanted to keep us away." Nodding, the man agrees that he did indeed distance himself, that it was not just for the kid's mother. He says that he just wanted to protect them from his gallery of rogues. He describes some of the things that he has seen these villains do, that they have no limits on the atrocities that they are willing to commit. He did not want to subject them to any of that. Instead, she dies to some random hoodlum because you weren't there. Master Izuku, Pennyworth interrupts them. Though the conversation ends, the boy believes he sees something flicker across his father's face. Doubt, grief, uncertainty, regret. The butler's voice returns his attention to the gentleman. I believe you have trained hard enough for this moment. It is time that we return to your more ordinary studies. 2 years later. Bruce Wayne watches as his son goes through a series of motions designed to improve his reflexes. The child dodges a pole that threatens to catch his midsection. He ducks under a second aim for his head. Dipping around a third, he dives to the ground to dodge a batarang thrown by his father. Coming back up, he weaves his way through the training area while complaining about how easy the drill has become. He mutters something about needing more of a challenge and asks the man if he can join him on his nightly patrol. The man shakes his head and replies that Izuku is not ready yet. When the boy tries to argue with him, he tosses a few more batarangs. Catching the first, the kid uses it to deflect the rest and snarls, "See, I have been training for years. I've worked hard. When will I be good enough for you?" Acknowledging his efforts, Bruce still denounces the boy's claims. He tells him that a real fight is not like training. There are things he's not prepared to face. As tears fall from his eyes, the child groans and mocks his father's voice before continuing his argument. "You're not ready. You don't have enough experience. I won't get any if you never let me go out there." Clearing his throat, Alfred intervenes in the conversation. He mentions that he will be leaving the city and Bruce cannot go with him, since Batman is needed in Gotham. He suggests that the kid accompany him. It will let Izuku get out of the house and see a bit more of the world. He adds that if he runs into any trouble, the boy will have a chance to prove himself and gain some experience. Reluctantly, Bruce states that he will think it over. Midoriya groans again. "What is there to think over? I have done everything you've asked of me. I am only asking for a chance." With a sigh, his father agrees to let him go on the trip. The boy smiles and wipes his eyes. He tries to excuse himself to go pack his things, but Alfred stops him. "There is plenty of time for that later, Master Izuku. We do not leave for a few days still. While there is a time for tears, you may want to practice controlling the waterworks. No villain is going to fear a crying child." His smile falters a little, knowing that the butler is only half joking. The truth of those words sting, but it cannot be denied. He nods and thanks the man for his advice. He excuses himself again, but this time to go and meditate on those words. Nodding, both men give Midoriya the leave to head for his room. Once the child is out of earshot, with Bruce checking more than once, the man tells his steward that he would like them to avoid any confrontation, if possible. He believes the boy is too emotional, too sad, and too angry to properly conduct himself in a high-stress situation. Alfred agrees, but asks if there's any way that this has anything to do with the boy's training, or rather that he's dealing with his feelings and not just hiding them. Shrugging, the vigilante murmurs something about it being the only way he knows. The butler's face takes on a somber expression. "Do you ever regret my decision to let you walk this path?" Bruce cracks a rare smile and speaks. "Come now, old friend. I never gave you much of a choice. I'm just not sure I want to enlist my son into my war on crime." The older gentleman's face softens with a slight smile, but it too is sad, and he replies, "I'm not sure he'll let that choice be yours, Master Bruce." A few days later, Izuku stares out of the window of the 65th floor of the tallest hotel in Metropolis. His eyes bounce between other buildings and the streets below. From so high up, the people are nothing more than specks and vehicles, naught but dots. He turns and he hears Alfred approach. The man informs him that he is on his way to First Metropolitan Bank and gives clear instructions that the boy is to remain in the room. He is not to leave for any reason, but the butler has left some currency for room service. Complaints flood out of Midoriya's mouth. The butler tries to hide a little smirk at what has become almost a string of catchphrases for the child. He reminds the kid that this is also part of his training. Discipline, patience, obedience. These are the traits that the life of a vigilante requires. Groaning again, the boy agrees to stay put. Pennyworth walks out. Left behind, the son of the bat continues to stare out at the city. The hours crawl by. Each minute extends into an eternity as morning changes to afternoon. He leaves the window. Sitting down, he flicks on the television and spends most of the afternoon channel surfing. Something catches his eye, a documentary on Superman, a newer one that the boy has not yet seen, one that he would not have missed in the past. The screen flashes images of the superhero, but he pays little attention. His thoughts are stolen away by how different his life has become. The scene on the television changes with a breaking news report. The First Metropolitan Bank has been seized by Two-Face. A slew of terrible possibilities swell up from a dark and negative place in his mind. His brow furrows with concern and he rises from his seat. Stepping back to the window, he looks over the city and makes a decision. Racing to his room, he pulls out a suitcase. He reaches in and grabs a long pair of green pants. He snips them down to shorts. A child turns the pant legs into a makeshift gloves and mask to partially obscure his face. Snatching up a red shirt, he changes into it. Moving in front of a mirror in the bathroom, he looks himself over. While he certainly does not look as frightening as the costume of his father, he believes it will at least protect his identity. He stares at the mirror and murmurs to himself, something is still missing. Behind him, the heater kicks on. The air rises and blows around a long bath towel. The swaying yellow fabric draws his attention. He turns and snags it from the rack. With a flourish, Izuku throws the towel over his shoulders and ties it around his neck. Glancing in the mirror again, he nods. A cape is exactly what his outfit needs. On his way out, he picks up the free shampoos, conditioners, and body washes. Getting out his smaller travel bag, the boy dumps it out. He apologizes to Alfred, even though the man is gone, when he does the same to the butler's personal bag. Looking at the contents of both, he grabs the man's straight razors and shaving cream. He finds a few pens, some paper clips, toothpaste, and even toothbrushes to add as well. Gathering all the sheets he can in the room, he ties them together. With the small bag packed, he wraps the sheets around his torso and throws on an overcoat that Alfred had left behind. It is long enough to cover most of the kid, with the sleeves hanging lower than his own hands. He rolls up the sleeves, pockets the mask for the moment, and exits the hotel. Once on the street, Midoriya hails a taxi and hops into the back seat. The cab driver asks him if he has enough to cover the fare. Pulling out a wad of cash left for him to get some food, the boy waves it. The amount the child seems to have on hand surprises the taxi driver. Izuku tells him that if he can get him to the bank in under 10 minutes, then he can have the whole fistful of money. With a nod, the man turns around and pulls the cab away from the curb. Just over 5 minutes later, the passenger of the cab finds himself locked in traffic. Still a few blocks from his destination, the boy mumbles to himself that he will not make it in time. The driver disagrees and hops the vehicle onto the sidewalk, honking wildly. He turns into an alleyway and gets the boy less than a half a block away from the bank. Sighing, the man says that this is as close as they can get. Before he can even turn around, he hears the door both open and shut. The man looks behind him to see the money in the back seat, with the boy nowhere to be found. Above the man, Izuku climbs a fire escape. Hand over hand, he scales it with ease. As soon as he reaches the top, he looks for the flashing lights of the police cars. Only a minor challenge to find amidst the city and a setting sun. He takes a running leap from one building to the next. He does this 2 more times and then discovers the difference in height between the building he is on and the bank that looms several stories above him. Searching the windows above, he finds the villain's goons moving about on the floors below and the one across from him. He sees them leading Alfred and some others further down. Removing the coat, he unravels the sheets and finds a good place to tie one end down. Using these sheets, he scales down to a safe enough drop and lands with a roll to help break the fall. Midoriya's eyes scan the alleyway. At one end, he can see cops gathered. He creeps closer. Once in range, he can hear them talking about the situation. The goons have been gathering the people from every floor of the building. While the villains are taking the bills available from the bank, Two-Face is demanding more money and a helicopter. If his demands are not met, he plans to start playing with the lives of the hostages in the next 20 minutes. Heart thumping in his chest and his ears ringing, the child sneaks away. Down the other side of the alleyway, he comes across a door into the bank. He wraps a hand around the handle and tries to turn it. It's locked. Reaching into his bag at his side, Izuku pulls out a couple paper clips. He sticks them into the lock and uses a few deft movements to open the door in seconds. Slipping inside, he steps with great care. Looking down the hall, his eyes fall upon a security guard. When he approaches, he can see that the man is no longer breathing. Bending down, he pries the unfired taser from the cold, dead hands. The boy undoes the man's belt, equipped with a nightstick and mace, and wraps it around his own waist. He transfers a few things from his overloaded travel bag into the belt's pouches. Continuing on, the child creeps up to a corner. He pokes his head around it, and around the corner is a hall that leads to what looks like a large lobby. In the room, he can see some henchmen with guns circling a sizable group of people. He takes note of a large vent in the ceiling, a set of closed doors on the far side of the room, and a fire extinguisher next to the doors. Absorbed in assessing the situation, he does not hear the light footsteps of someone sneaking up behind him. Something presses against his back. The kid freezes. He hears a gruff voice telling him to stand slowly and turn around. Complying with the order, Midoriya looks down the barrel of a Tommy gun that is in his face. Fear courses through him with such force that his body shudders. The goon bursts out into laughter as he sees the full costume that the boy had put together. Muttering something about how the boss might like to see this, he pokes the barrel against Izuku's forehead. He starts to tell the child to move, but Midoriya bursts into action. Dropping low, he kicks the goon right between the legs. Caught off guard, the goon lets go of the gun to protect himself. Not quick enough, he screams and doubles over in pain. Then the world goes dark as he loses consciousness. Standing, the boy lets go of the man's neck. He peeks back around the edge. Down the hall, he sees a couple thugs heading his way. Pulling back, he hears the telltale rat-a-tat-tat of the guns as bullets whiz by his face. The kid spins around and takes off running. He hears the firing stop and footsteps beginning. Not daring to look back, he opens a door and darts inside. Izuku reaches into the travel bag. He pulls out the bottles of shampoo and conditioner. Unscrewing the caps, he squirts them onto the floor and in front of the door. Then he ducks into the corner and waits. The child listens as the two stop outside the little storage closet and call for him to come out. When he does not respond, they open fire, projectiles punching through the wood and tearing the walls. The clicking sound of the two empty guns precede a kick. Wood falls away from the hinge and lands covering the slippery trap. Clenching his teeth, Midoriya edges his way over to the doorway. He catches the first man in the throat when he pokes his head in. Rushing out, he plants one foot into the other's chest and slams the second one into his face. He leaves behind the dazed thugs and moves on, trying to find a way into the ducts. It takes him a few minutes, each one feeling longer than the hours he waited at the hotel. His mind screams he will not be able to save the butler. He shakes his head to clear it and opens another door. Eyes weave from one part of the room to the next. They land on a vent just out of his reach. Closing the door behind him, Izuku moves to a desk. He pushes it to the wall. The child climbs under the desk and removes one of the straight razors that he had added to the belt. Leaving it folded, he uses the flat edge to undo the bolts. And moments later, he is up and crawling through the ventilation shaft. He moves forward until he comes to an intersection. Stopping, Midoriya goes over the route he had taken while running from the thugs. He makes an educated guess and proceeds forwards. It pays off when he realizes that he's close. Unfortunately, the realization comes in the form of screams and a foul odor. By the time he reaches one of the grates above the lobby, the screams have stopped. In their place, a sickly sizzling and hissing sound. Below him, the boy sees a large metal vat full of bubbling green liquid. A bone floats to the surface. His own acid rises from his stomach, burning the lining in his throat. He swallows softly and moves forward to the next grate. Larger than the one before it, Izuku looks for Alfred. The child finds the man dangling above a second vat. Two-Face stands to the side, playing with a coin. He speaks to the steward about how the man has been so lucky. The coin has killed one person instead of the butler. While Pennyworth does not speak, it is obvious that he is furious and horrified. The boy clenches his teeth and his hands into a balled up fist, and his anger rises. His body starts to move on its own, reaching for the grate. He raises his fist. It takes every ounce of his willpower not to reveal his location. Midoriya forces himself to move on, reasoning that he cannot save the man from here. Backtracking a little, the kid scouts out a room nearby. When he is satisfied that no one is around, he breaks the vent grill. It takes him more than one good kick, but it falls to the floor with a clang. He opens the door and pokes his head out, seeing and hearing no one. He heads for the lobby entrance, next to the fire extinguisher. The boy approaches them, and he can see that one is not completely closed. He peers through the crack. No one looks to be all that close. Izuku pulls the door open a little more, until he can slip through. Sneaking to the extinguisher, he grabs it. The child slinks along the wall until he reaches the vat. He rounds it and comes within striking distance. Two-Face says something about Alfred's luck having run out. Removing the pin, Midoriya smacks the button. It begins to spray foam. Aiming for the villain's eyes, he races towards the man. Hitting him in the eyes with the foam, the boy swings the extinguisher. It connects. Two-Face drops to his knees with a loud groan. As one of his hands hit the ground, the coin drops to the floor and rolls away. The boy lunges for the coin, snatching it up. He scrambles to get out of the way as a few minions pull the trigger. Reason stops those foolish enough to do so, as the kid points out that their boss is between them and himself. They could lose their payday. Circling the vat below, Alfred reveals a ladder. Izuku scales it, he holds his hand over the vat and calls out for the villain to release the hostage. When Two-Face nears the ladder, Midoriya reveals the coin that he's about to drop. Losing it, the villain begins to beg the child not to drop the double-headed silver dollar. With everyone focused on the boy, the police make their move. Tear gas floods the room and shots are fired, covering his mouth. The kid slides down the ladder and slips out while it can. Once he is back in the vent, Izuku watches as everyone left is rescued. He sighs in relief when he sees Alfred being led down the outside. Not sure how to feel about the rest of this ordeal, Izuku Midoriya takes the long way back to the hotel. And with that, guys, that's all we got for today. Thank you so much for tuning in for the second part of What If Deku Was Robin? Guys, again, don't forget to subscribe. Make sure that you hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Guys, find me on Twitter, and hey, we will see you guys next time